So hello everyone. So today we'll be looking at how to run AWS Lambda. It is a serverless functions in your local system. So first we'll understand what is AWS Lambda. So AWS Lambda is a event-driven serverless architecture or platform which is provided by the Amazon Web Services, and it helps you to run your code or your business logic inside a function for a certain amount of time, and maximum amount of time is 15 minutes. So here is some examples. I'll just open a diagram basically. So if you see here, from Lambda service you can call some APIs basically, and it will get the output from the Lambda. To begin with, the having the Lambda run locally, what we need is a Docker. So there is something called Docker Desktop. So if you're on Windows, you have to install this Docker Desktop on the system. So it is available for Apple as well as Linux, and also for the Windows. You might ask what is Docker basically. So just for Docker's overview, it's an open source platform wherein we can combine our local code and all the dependency inside a Docker container, and we can pass that Docker container to other people, so that all the dependencies and everything which is working on our local system, they are provided to the other person, so that they don't need to install everything on their local. They can just directly get this Docker container, run it, and our application will be available to them directly without they needing to install anything locally. So this is mainly used for this reason, and it also provides you the same thing, the fast and consistent delivery of your application. And while you're working on scale, so you have to use this Docker basically. So it helps you in responsive deployment and scaling, so that if any particular application code fails, you can provide one new Docker container instead of that failed instance, and your system doesn't stop there. So this is the main thing about the Docker containers, and you can have as many as n workloads on the same hardware basically, because it is like emulating the hardware. So all the Docker containers running on your system can make use of single hardware, single PC hardware. Looking at the Docker architecture basically, so if you see, there are some commands like Docker build, Docker pull, and Docker run. And Docker host is the host wherein the Docker is installed. In our case, it will be a local Docker installation. So host is our Docker or own system basically. So you can have as many as like n number of Docker containers, and all of them will be having one image basically. So if we are running image is basically like operating system. So you can have Linux or you can have Windows as well as Mac Linux systems, operating systems running as Docker containers, and you can push that Docker container in a registry. Basically, registry is like a repository of your Docker containers or Docker images, and this can help us to fetch images very fast and run it locally or on the any system. So I'll show you how to do that. So this is just a background about the Docker containers, and also how we can run the AWS Lambda on the local system. So now let's go ahead with the uh, demonstration. So first I will show you, uh, I have opened the Docker desktop. So if you see, we have to run this Docker desktop software. It will show you the containers whichever are running. Currently there are none. So I'll just go ahead and jump in the VS Code, and I'll show you how it is created. So here is one. I have just created one folder, and in here I have created a Docker file. So this file name is Docker file, and basically in here we'll provide whatever things we need to include in our Docker image. Okay, and along with that, we also want to install one Docker extension, VS Code Docker extension. So if you go in extensions from here, and if you search for Docker, this extension will come up from Microsoft. So this you have to install. So this will help us to see our Docker containers in our VS Code itself. So let's just begin with the so I have opened this Docker file. Let's look at so the first thing is we have to get an image or an operating system. So there is certain syntax for writing Docker file. So Docker file actually contains the commands which you want to run. So if you want to get something from somewhere, we have to write from, and if you see that it was showing us this image. So in our case, we want to get public dot ecr. So this is the image name basically, and we are getting from the public ecr, like repository, we are getting the Lambda image of Python 3.8 version. So this is from the AWS itself. So whenever we are making use of AWS Lambda, we are actually using this particular image behind the scenes. So we are fetching that image, and then what we need to do is we have to copy our function code. So Lambda is actually a function. So we have to provide a file to it basically. So in my case, I have added one file called app.py. So this is just a Python file which takes in a file, basically HTML file, and converts it into a PDF basically using HTML to PDF library. So we just go ahead and copy that uh, app.py file. So copy is basically we want to copy it from our local system inside a Docker container. So that's why we are using a command called as copy. See, copy source to destination. So our source is our app.py. So app.py is in our current directory. So I'm just directly going ahead and providing it. Then we have to provide where you want to have this app.py present. So there is an environment variable called lambda task root. So I'll just go ahead and provide this. So what this will do, it will copy the app.py from this, and it will put it inside the root folder inside the AWS Lambda Docker container. Okay. And next thing is to run this HTML to PDF, we need one library basically. So this library is actually I have downloaded from the Amazon Linux system. So this is WK HTML to PDFs. So this is a RPM package. So our operating system is basically CentOS. So that's why you're using the RPM packages. So I'll just go ahead and copy this binary package. So we have copied this also package inside our Docker container. Now we need to run some command to install this package. So if you see, we have to run in CentOS. We have to use yum command. So yum install -y will provide yes. Basically, we don't need to provide yes or no for the installation. -y means it will take it directly from the command itself. It will not ask or wait for the user to provide y or yes. So this command will start running the RPM package and installing the RPM. Apart from that, we need to have some dependency installed. So I can use the run command again. So I'll just so run yum install -y. So these are all the libraries that we are installing, and I'll just tweak this last command. So doing yum install, what I will do is I'll write rpm -i. So this is something like apt get install in Ubuntu. Same thing I'm doing with CentOS as rpm -i, and the name of the file. So the name of the file is this one .rpm. Okay. So we install our WK HTML to PDF binary package inside the CentOS. Now the last thing is we have to provide the name of the file, name of the Lambda files. So once this Docker image is built, whenever you are invoking this Docker container, the app.py should run. So that's why we are using some command called as cmd. So in cmd we have to provide the executable. So in our case, our executable is from app.py file. We want to run handler function. Okay. So I'll just open it to you. The app.py, we have this handler function. So we are calling this handler function here. Okay. So this is the entry point of our Docker container basically. And now what we can do, we don't need to write, usually we need to write a build command to Dockerize and build this image basically. But using this VS Code extension, we have some availability of easy to use things, like if you go ahead and right click on this Docker file, we will see that there is something called build image, second last one. So if you click on build image, it will provide you the name which you can provide for the image. So I'll just provide run AWS Lambda locally latest. So latest is the tag, so you can put it as particular version 1.0 or something, but I'm going ahead with latest. So if you open the terminal and please start building the Docker container, as you can see that it has loaded definition from Docker file. It got the metadata from the AWS ECR, and it is now pulling all those files from the AWS. So these are all the Docker image files. So once these are all fetched and the Docker image is built, it will give us an message basically that it is processed or it has built the Docker image. So we'll wait until unless that this process is done. So as you can see, it has built the Docker image, and now you can press any key. I'll just press enter, and now you can see that over here in the Docker, if you click on Docker extension, we'll see that there are all these individual containers. Close this. If you click on images, we'll see our AWS Lambda run locally will be there. So if you see run AWS Lambda locally, same thing you can verify if you go in the containers and if you go in the images. If you see there is this name of the image, and whatever command was run will be shown here basically. Okay, the size is 1.11 GB. Now let's go ahead and now run this container. So our image is built. Now we have to run this container. So for running the container, what we need to do is there is a command called docker run, and we have to provide the file which you want to add to it. Basically, I just open this terminal and let's go ahead and run this container. I'll just close this image and let's keep this open so that we know when it is running. When it is running, it will show in the green mark. Okay. Now let's go ahead and just type docker, then run -d -it, that is interactive mode, and the name of the container we want to give is run lambda locally, and mount a file system on this docker container. So docker container is having separate file system, separate operating system. So what we are gonna do is we are gonna mount our local Windows file system onto the docker container. So for that we have to provide the name of the file which you want to copy. So in our case, we'll say before that we have to provide type. So type is our bind. So we want to bind the port, and the source equals to, we want to provide the public current directory. So we can just go ahead and write $, this is the environment variable $, and the open and close only basis. Inside there we have to provide pwd. Okay, and /. So this is the source. This is our current working directory from Windows, and the target we have to provide. So target will be our temp directory. So this is the temp directory inside a Docker container. So basically in AWS Lambda, the only directory where you can write and read is temp directory. So temp directory, only in temp directory you can save our files. That's why I'm providing the target as /tmp. And now we have to provide the port number. So docker container runs is on the port. So we have to provide from our local system, we have to use 9000 port, and inside the docker container we want to use 8080 port. Okay, and we have to provide the name of the image. So in our case, the name of the image is, let's go ahead and check in the images, run AWS Lambda locally. Let's go ahead and run enter. So now you can see that it has provided one stream. So this is the Docker container stream. Okay, so I'll just close the image, and if you come here and I'll just refresh this, so you can see that our container has started running, and you can go ahead and check the file system. In the files you will see all the different folders, and inside here if you go inside temp directory, you can see all the files are present here. So whatever files we had copied, right, so all those files have come here. And since we have mounted this, we wanted to have all these files inside the Docker container, so we mounted this current working directory. That's why if you see here, all these files are from the current working directory mounted on the temp folder. Same way, if you go in the var folder, there is something called task. Okay, so if you go inside var underscore / task, you can see that this is the target system or Docker container system. So in target system, we only have app.py and the wk-html. So this is the Docker image which we had built, right? So we had copied the app.py and the RPM package. So only these two things are there. So whenever our Lambda runs, basically it runs this app.py. Okay, so that's why they are in the task directory, and this is only read-only directory. We can't write to this directory. Okay, now let's go ahead and make a request. So there is a curl command basically, so which is used for making web request from the command line. So it's a Linux utility. So I'll just go ahead and use curl -x post, and the URL is basically our local host, since we have Docker container on our local system, and the port which we had provided was 9000, and this 9000 will convert and it will make calls internally to Docker container on port 8080. Okay, and we are just providing this date and functions and invocation, which is just a standard procedure on which we have to invoke it. And the data which we want to provide is, I'm just providing an empty dictionary, because app.py we are not listening for any event or anything. So I'll just go ahead and press enter. So this should create a file basically, and that file will be present here. So if you see that report.pdf was not present, so if you see that it has returned hello from Lambda, and the file name which has returned is /temp/report.pdf. So one PDF was generated from the HTML. So this was the HTML, and this is the PDF. So let's go ahead and check this PDF. I'll just enable this extension just to check the PDF. So you can see that our PDF is generated basically. Yeah, so this is how you generate a PDF from our HTML. So you can provide any HTML to it and it will generate the PDF basically. Yeah, so once you are done, you can just go ahead and delete the container basically. So if you go back here, so you can just right click on it and you can click on stop. Okay, it will stop the container, and after that, if you want, you can just refresh. If you want to delete Docker container, because it takes some space around 1.1 GB, you can just remove it. Click on remove and it will remove the container. Let's go in the Docker desktop and let's check here. Check in the containers here. There are no running containers. Let's go in images. So image is still there, 1.1 GB. You can go ahead and just click on delete, and you can click on delete forever. So this is how you delete the local images. You can also deploy the repository on remote ECR. ECR is basically Elastic Container Registry. So all your Docker images you can publish to the AWS ECR. That's all about how to run AWS Lambda locally, and or how to deploy the AWS Lambda locally for testing purposes.